sector for a long time and knowing their pains and problems with regard to legal disputes and the enforcements, I thought this is the best occasion, in fact, to discuss these issues with the availability of two experts who are working in this domain. So I also got reminded of a very important parameter of ease of doing business for the business community in the country. We all know that we have been improving in terms of ease of World Bank index of ease of doing business. I think over the last few years we have come down from 150 something to 63, which is a very great improvement in all parameters. Contract enforcement is one of the 10 parameters which are measured by the World Bank under that index specified by the World Bank, where we have improved to 63. But if you see the individual parameters of the World Bank ease of doing business, there is one parameter called contract enforcement. Now in contract enforcement, we are 163 out of 200 countries. So while in overall cumulative terms, we may have improved in many other things, but what is more important as to ease of doing business is contract enforcement. If we are not improved in contract enforcement, and our people, particularly the business community and the more particularly with regard to the small enterprises, the micro, small, medium, who are very vulnerable, in fact, they can't run to courts and pursue the legal proceedings because they are one-man owned companies and small outfits, and they don't have any big legal department. They can't engage the advocates, full-time lawyers, and even can't afford also to pay so much of legal fees and expenses. So it's all the more necessary and desirable that for MSMEs, even for all other businesses, the ease of doing business should be further improved to bring in a lot of improvement in contract enforcement, which is at 163, at a much lower than. So what does need to be done exactly? How do we improve the contract enforcement? Mediation and arbitration are two very important tools in the legal system, which can really bring in a lot of improvement and changes. We have experts on this mediation and arbitration. We'll get their views. But before that, let me bring in some issues and problems which are causing difficulties to the business community and more particularly to the MSME sector. We know micro, small and medium enterprises, as per the revised definition given by the government, constitute 99% of all businesses in the country. So you can imagine, if you are thinking of improving the legal system, MSME accounts for the maximum 99%, and we should take care of their interests and their requirements and look at what are the problems which they are facing. So let me bring in some issues which are important, and I am sure that our experts would be able to address these issues when they deliver their address. The first issue is basically, besides, I am not taking the legal disputes which arise very rarely or maybe once in a while, like assets disputes, claims, property disputes, disputes between shareholder and the company, dispute between directors, inter se directors, dispute between one company to another with regard to their property rights, claims and all. I'm not looking at that. They are disputes which arise once in a while. I'm talking of disputes which arise on day-to-day basis, every day, like payment of checks, like payment of bills and receivables. Most of the businesses do credit sales, and when they take the checks in payment, of course now the things are changing with digital payment system, but post-dated check still continues to be one of the very important method of payment to the MSMEs, because RTGS and payment through internet you can do instantly, but when you want to make post-dated payment, when you want to make payment after 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you issue post-dated checks. So realization of post-dated checks is a big problem and a big issue of disputes because crores and crores of checks are pending for payment. And under Section 138, which was the provision made by the Government of India a few years back, people are taking these unpaid checks to the courts, and courts are flooded with these problems. And I think there are a lot of cases pending in courts because of non-payment of checks, and there is no resolution also to it. The process is slow because of the number and because of the system. You have to produce all the documents because judiciary will not be able to pass the judgment without looking at all the evidence and the documents. So payment becomes a difficulty as far as the checks are concerned. That is one thing. Second thing, when you raise credit invoices and credit, provide credit to the buyers, MSMEs, or even other businesses also, credit sales or credit transaction needs to be repaid at a later date on the due date. So these invoices and these bills remain unpaid, similar to checks. In these cases, there may not be checks even. At least for checks, there is a provision under Section 138. But for credit sales, which is not backed by checks, you have to only take, legal recourse by way of filing a civil suit. And we all know recovery of money through civil suits in the normal course takes how much time and how many years. And after you take these measures and go for civil suit, what are you going to get? A decree after so much of number of years and producing all the evidence. When you come back with the decree, what do you do with the decree? Because decree again needs execution through the courts, and then it takes few more years to execute the decree. So it's a very lengthy process with regard to settlement of disputes for payments to the businesses. They are struggling because of this. I hope that mediation and arbitration are proved to be very, very important tools. We will come to know through the experts how fast, how efficiently, how speedily and with cost effectiveness these tools can really help the business community to resolve the problem. That is one thing. Second issue, I understand we have the advantage of having an expert out of two, Neelam Vatsji. She is also, I think Neelam Vats or Radhika ji, I'm forgetting, we will come to know. She is also expert and deals with the IPRs. I think it's Radhika ji. So there are many areas where MSMEs particularly are also concerned with protecting their intellectual property rights, whether it is patents or copyrights or other designs or other kinds of trademarks or any other properties, intellectual property we are talking about. So what is the procedure? How do we go about for protecting the IPRs? What is the way that once you get the IPR's protection done, how do get, if there is a violation, how do you get the enforcement done? Because that is more important. Protection is one part of the IPR regime. You file for IPRs, you get the IPRs registered in your name, and you start working using the IPRs. Commercial exploitation is done, IPRs, you commercially take the advantage of those IPRs by making your own products or leasing it out to others or renting it out or selling the IPRs. But then people tend to violate. There are a lot of violations happening around the world, and you will not even know that there are violations. People may be slightly modifying or even taking the same names and same brands and same signs and designs and copyrights and then flouting the IPR regime. So that is also a very important issue that we thought we could discuss today when I came to know Radhika ji, dealing with the IPRs, because we at the chamber also deal with IPRs, and there is a lot of assistance available from the government for filing of IPRs, even the financial assistance also. But I came across, in fact, I was interested to file an IPR, and we started working with the IPR attorney. It took long time, in fact, preparing the IPR and filing, it took long time. How can we cut the delay? I think that also needs to be discussed. and how cost effective it can be made as far as the enforcement is concerned. So these are some of the areas I thought, let me set the context of the discussion. We have the experts with us. We will hear them first of all 10 minutes each, and then out of various issues we will have a interactive discussion to sort out unanswered issues, and at the end we will take the questions from the audience to address their concerns one by one. So let me first bring in our expert, Ms. Neelam Watts. She is a legal professional for almost 20 years experience as a corporate counsel. And she started with a very big firm, Luthra and Luthra, which is a law firm, and then joined IBM, which is a rather international company, and ultimately founded her own law firm, Legal Orbit, and has been practicing in that firm for mediation, arbitration, and as well as other legal issues of the business community. So I will ask Ms. Neelam Watts to take the mic and put him only a small question, because she has understood the context, how mediation is very helpful and beneficial and can replace the normal conventional civil legal procedures, so that faster decision making can be done and we can really achieve the objective of ease of doing business. Neelamji, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Hello, everyone. Mr. Kumar has already given a brief intro of mine. So, I'm considering the time constraint, I'll straight away come to the point. Well, when we talk about contracts enforcement, I would want to take a step back. Do we really understand what a contract means? When we sign a contract, it is very important to reflect the exact understanding between the parties. I would not talk about the legal clauses, I would rather emphasize more on the commercial clauses. How do you look at it? It's very, very important, to consider your contract very seriously. When you talk about, I'll, talk more specifically about MSMEs, since all my audience here belongs to that category. See, it's very important for you because we need to understand, especially for MSME, every single penny has an opportunity cost attached to that. So if you spend any money in litigation, then we need to understand how we are, actually are foregoing the opportunity cost attached to that money. So when a contract is designed, if it's like a supply contract, and it is very important that you decide about the process, how do you want it. So the exact, the best way is to communicate. What a lawyer is drawing, forget about that. But you need to go through the contract, understanding whether it reflects the exact understanding how the process is going to be. Does it talk about the rejection of purchase order as well in the contract itself? Does it talk about the delays? Does it talk about the liquidated damages? And what if the limit has already been exhausted? What happens if there is a delay in payment? What rights do you have? So at that point itself, you need to talk about it. Because what happens if the parties communicate their, concerns at the right time, then, we cannot rule out the possibility of disputes and litigation later on. But yes, both sides parties then have a clarity about the entire process which would be involved in the transaction. I'm more specifically talking about the business transaction. I'm not talking about any, those investment transactions or any IPR infringement matters and all. But I'm talking about day-to-day business transactions. It's very, very important that your contract should reflect the exact understanding. Even the process should be defined with accuracy. Now, what happens like when there is a dispute? Most of the time what happens, there's a lack of communication. Going by my experience, I'm telling you, I have been in an in-house counsel role as well with one of the biggest organization worldwide. And there it was considered that, we at any cost we have to avoid the litigation. And IBM in most of the countries is a kind of litigation-free company. Reason being, a lot of time is being invested by each and every team in the drafting of the contract. That time is a constructive time because you would invest that time once and twice. Third time, you will be very well aware of your concern areas. And secondly, if there is a dispute, then let's try to understand the exact nature of the dispute. Now, suppose parties understand that there is a commercial dispute and they need to resolve it. Now, resolve it or litigate it, that is a question. At that point of time, also you need to evaluate. Before coming to the mediation, I'm saying what a company itself can do it, because it's very, very important.
Miss Neelam, you got muted. Could you please unmute yourself? Someone.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how long I have been unmuted.
No, hardly 5
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So we need to focus on the contract itself. And then if there is a dispute, then there has to be a strategy. We need to, look at it. The strategy should be, do we understand the nature of dispute? Do we, what is our position? We need to evaluate our position as well. And these are the things which I'm talking, which a company itself has to do it before it reaches to a third party for mediation or approaches the court. And when you have the the list in front of you, your weaknesses and your strength, the dispute, the reason of dispute, where do you stand in terms of violation of any of the any breach in the contract of it, or it is the other party. And even if you are actually the aggrieved party, then you need to evaluate what is your loss, the quantum of litigation fees and the time and the manpower which you will be deploying in that, and the outcome, as Mr. Kumar also said, because in India it's quite unfortunately, but it's not very speedy mechanism when it comes to legal proceedings. So most of the time, because I have been in in-house role also, so I understand and appreciate every penny earned by the company. There's a lot of efforts go into it. So is spending it in litigation actually pinches a lot, though many times it becomes important, it becomes essential. So they have to do it. But let's look at it. What else can we do? If we understand our position very well, even before approaching to the lawyer, then we can formulate a strategy. We can decide. In fact, most of the contracts, and especially like we represent a lot of MNCs and Fortune 500 companies. In fact, what I realized, the bigger the company is, the more emphasis they put on having an alternate dispute resolution clause in the agreement, because they do understand the lengthy process, at the same time the cost and time, because time is also money for everyone. So in that process, they usually talk about it. In fact, to the extent, sometimes they do talk about it, that if it is a technical dispute, how it should be resolved. If it is a commercial dispute with respect to invoicing, billing, payments, then how it should be resolved. And if it is illegal, then how it should be resolved. So it can be categorized as well. Though at the time of writing a contract, sometimes the especially SME's reaction is that it's too lengthy a contract. But we need to understand, even if it is lengthy, but actually it captures all the eventualities, and it becomes easier later on. There is no vagueness in the contract. And then this mediation process, because if we really go by the literal meaning of the mediator, is also someone who intervenes in a dispute to bring parties to an agreement. So it could be a private arrangement as well. And it could be, even the top executives in the company as well, who can play as mediator, and the dispute can be resolved. If that has been exhausted, then there could be an industry expert parties, sometimes they name some industry expert, or they talk about it, some professional association, that they will pick up somebody from there and they will resolve their dispute. That is also more or less like a dispute resolution mechanism only. And at times but most of these, since MSME sector, there's a lot of unorganized contracting, and sometimes like verbal contract only through PO and all that. So when they approach the court also evaluates, like if there is because they also appreciate that there's so much of efforts goes into it, and these are the MSMEs, so for them it's like it would be a lot of wastage of their time and money. So they themselves recommend to the mediation center. Every court has a mediation center where it's mediator. I mean, there's no cost attached to it for the parties. And sometimes, some of the court fees also refunded, because the court fees is also a significant cost. We cannot avoid that, because that talks in terms of percentage of the claim. So sometimes even, if it has been successful process, that has also been refunded to a great extent. And in that mediation process, what happens? Now, what is this mediation process? When a court refers you to the mediation, then somebody who is neutral to both of you will come on the table, will understand both the parties' issues. And most of the time when court refers to a mediation center, then the parties are represented by their respective lawyers. So their lawyers gives a legal picture to the mediator, and parties add their facts to the mediator. But not necessarily you have to have a lawyer, because mediator is also a lawyer. There's a panel. There are paneled lawyers who are chosen basis their roster by the court and been referred to. So that is where you can give your pictures, and the mediator basically acts as a neutral party and gives their recommendation and all for the reconciliation. Now it makes more sense to go for mediation only when you are willing to compromise on certain position, because if you are adamant on your position, there is a likelihood the other party may also not bend. They will also continue on their stand. Otherwise, you would not have reached on this stage if your present position been acceptable to the other party. So when we go for mediation, we need to have it in our mind that we need to evaluate our long-term position with respect to this client or customer or that particular transaction, and evaluate the cost and time factor, and then see whether it makes sense to go for mediation or not. And secondly, our facts should be clear to us. If we feel that we have been at a breach of some of the terms, or it's like we have been at fault, then it makes more sense to go for it. And even if we have not been, then also evaluating the cost and time factor, we can be willing to a little compromising on certain position, and especially in terms of settlement of dispute in quantum of damages claim or penalties paid. So this way, at least we will save a lot of costs, which we might end up paying to the lawyers. And rather, it makes more sense to save that cost and spend on lawyers at the time of, either you getting because every company has a certain business model to follow. So basis their business model, they can have their even standard templates and their standard terms and condition, they can standardize those terms and condition, and they can, because this way they will be avoiding any vagueness in future dealings, because they can clarify to their clients that these are the terms on which they want to deal with. And once a mediation process starts and the parties reaches to an agreement, then they actually get into a settlement agreement. Now, if mediation is through the process of court, then this mediation agreement is filed with the court, and this will have the same validity as an arbitral award has, and it can get executed through the intervention of the court, because it's like court will make that agreement as a part of its its order. So even court facilitates this process, and during that period we need not worry about it. We can still go for certain interim measures like injunctions and all that if we feel threatened for anything, for maybe against BG or any IPR infringement or anything like that, we can still go to the court, because the court proceedings are halted during this period, but not necessarily that your rights I mean, you cannot approach the court. You definitely can approach the court. So it's a strategy which we need to think about it. And the thinking process goes, what as an MSME my business model is. Am I a product company? Am I a IT company as a product? And how do I want to prepare my revenue model? If my revenue model is basis licensing of my IT product, then what should be there in my end user license agreement, or what should be on what terms, whether it should be a term based license or a perpetual license. Basically, I need to define my business model properly. That is also very important, because that will help me in listing my important terms on which I want to do business. Now, my back-to-back, if I have my vendors, my suppliers, what are the risks I can pass on to them if my customer is passing on to me. So these are the ways which I, because of which I can mitigate. I can prepare a model where I mitigate most of my risk. At the same time, I have a clarity. So the risk of going for dispute gets minimized, and if at all it is there, then my advice is always to the company, though despite being a lawyer, I always tell them, you as a company, because you have a relationship with the other party, you understand other party, you understand the exact nature of the dispute. So first you think through it, and you let me know what are your views in terms of how much you can compromise and how much this cost matter to you. At times it's a question of prestige also between the parties. There's an ego tussle also. So, but they need to take an informed call. It should not be an impulsive call. So they let us know, and then we guide them, because as lawyers also, most of the time we initiate a mediation process where we talk to the other side lawyer, and we bring both the parties on the table. So that is like a private mediation. And if the parties has approached to the court and they are not aware of anything, then they can ask court also to refer them to the mediation. At times court on its own also refers. And the question whether can you say no? Yes, you can say no. If you are not interested, in that case, your court proceedings will resume. And so ultimately, it's like I've read somewhere here, do it yourself, like P2S says, DIY, do it yourself. So as a MSME, you need to evaluate the process which you have been following in your business transaction. And if there are many disputes, you need to reevaluate it. Where you are going wrong, where are the ambiguities which you need to actually clarify to your partner or to your customer, so that you can bring more clarity and the possibility can be minimized. Definitely litigation possibilities can never be ruled out. At the same time, no lawyer will ever give you the assurance, even if you are the most innocent party and you are the aggrieved party, that yes, order would definitely be in your favor. You will never hear this kind of a statement, because there are so many things go into it. So it's always best, I think, considering the time, do I need to cut short it, or so I think I'll
come back to you, Neelamji. I think we can take some views from Radhika, and then we'll keep talking. There are so many issues that you have raised. It has been so interesting and so honestly told, in fact. Normally, lawyers do not come out so honestly as you have, as you have deliberated. So very, very, very practical guidance, and shows your in-depth experience of dealing with the, business community, particularly the MSMEs, the small, business people. And we'll come back to you, because I have noted so many things while your observation with regard to clear understanding between the two parties. That is the key, in fact. I fully appreciate, because one party writes something, the other party doesn't even understand, then there is going to be conflict. So first is communication, as you rightly started with. and both parties have to be on the same page. They understand the implication, what they are writing and what they are contracting for, whether it is formal or informal contract. Because as you rightly mentioned, the informal contracts are also in plenty, and it may be very difficult to in fact deal with such informal, or I would say, unwritten contracts, or maybe some kind of contracts which are not legally complete. So lot of interesting issues. We'll keep talking and come back to you. Let me bring in now Ms. Radhika Singh. She is managing partner of Althea Legal, and um, I would like to talk. I would like to request her to talk about arbitration, because mediation we have discussed. So I understand arbitration, of course, is also a legal process, valid process, and very useful. It has been, percolating more and more in the country. People are adopting arbitration now. In every contract, probably the arbitration clause is also there, and a lot of cases. In fact, I have also, during my chairmanship of NSIC, went for, people used to come to me for approval for legal action. I said, why legal action? Go for arbitration. And in all the contracts, we should fix the, arbitration clause. Even in foreign contracts also,
Yeah.
I was working in a foreign country, and there is always an arbitration provision. And arbitration provision is also similar to like a legal judgment, as you mentioned about the mediation also. So I'll bring in Radhika Singh ji and would ask her to talk about arbitration, and particularly how it is more attractive, what are the benefits, and how can people take, particularly the MSMEs, take advantage of this arbitration. So over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here and to be speaking with all of you. And I would really want to thank Neelam for setting the stage, by talking about conciliation. So, like Mr. Kumar said, that arbitration of late has been, the preferred medium that companies are taking. But it's also very important to know why. Why is it important? Why is it that a lot of people are now going in for arbitration instead of litigation? And like Neelam said, arbitration, mediation, conciliation are alternate dispute resolutions, alternate to litigation. Now, let me straight away get down to, when you have an agreement, when you have a contract, and you're going through the contract, most important thing is to look at, what if there is a dispute between the parties? How do the parties want to approach it? And for that, it's extremely important for a company to know what are the various options that it has. One, we all know, is litigation, going to civil court in case of civil cases, and criminal in case there is any criminal matters involved. The other aspect, like what Neelam covered, was conciliation or mediation. And the third one is arbitration. Now, in arbitration, one of the important things is that every agreement ideally should have an arbitration clause. It should clearly say that the parties are choosing and they are going to be governed, assuming that both the parties are in India, that they're going to be governed by the laws of India. But if there is any dispute that arises regarding the contract, then in that case, they wish to submit to arbitration. Sometimes what we also do is, when we're drafting a contract, we say that the parties could first try and discuss the matter between them. They can have 30 days or 15 days, depending on what the parties agree to try and settle the dispute between the senior management, that both the senior management speak to each other. They try and settle the case there. They try and discuss whatever issues there are. And if after 15 days they are unable to do that, then one of the parties can move forward and say they want to submit for arbitration. Now, very important thing in an arbitration clause is, one, it should say that, the parties have a choice. They get to choose who would they want to submit the arbitration to. Who will be the arbitrator? Arbitration always is of an odd number of people. The arbitrator could be 1, 3, or more. Ideally, when it's an MSME, or if it's not a very big contract, or the value is not very high, we generally say go for a single arbitrator. The parties can decide who the single arbitrator is. The benefit is both parties can mutually agree to the appointment of an arbitrator. Then it's not that one party will go choose somebody of their own, the other, like it happens in litigation. Here, both parties know, and both parties will agree to one individual who would be the arbitrator. In case they are unable to agree, then they can say that the arbitrator will be appointed as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. They can go by the provisions of the Act. Now there is, if I go to then the other thing is the parties can decide where the venue of arbitration is going to be, where the seat of arbitration is going to be. Like if a dispute arises, I saw in chat box one of the person said that, there was a dispute and the person has filed a consumer case in Calcutta, but they may be located somewhere else. So it could be two parties, one is in Delhi, one is in Bangalore or some other state, and then the Delhi party will want to file in Delhi, Bangalore party will want to file in Bangalore. But in arbitration, you beforehand can agree that where will the arbitration happen, what is the seat of arbitration. So the parties already know and they have it in mind that this is where the dispute will arise. There are no surprises. So that is one clear thing which happens in arbitration. That is it. Then the parties can clearly say what will be the language, what will be the medium of arbitration, and this is some of the aspects. Now, if we go to the advantage of an arbitration over litigation, first element is that fairness. There is an element of fairness that prevails in the arbitration process from the very beginning. Why? Because the parties have a say in the selection of arbitrators. They are heard individually and together they can decide who the arbitrator is, and it helps to settle the disputes amicably. Length of proceedings. One of the things which people keep, which we complain a lot is that a litigation goes on for ages. And by the time, the award is decided or the judgment is there, by then the parties have already lost interest maybe in the subject matter for which they were litigating. Under the Arbitration Act, there has been a recent amendment in 2019 whereby arbitration disputes have to be closed within a period of 12 months. And the added advantage is if the parties want to extend it beyond 12 months, they can extend it by 6 more months. But if they want to add it beyond 6 months, then they can do that only with the permission of the court to extend it further. So parties know that the dispute has to be settled within 12 months plus 6. So 18 months the arbitration has to be settled. So the amendments have been brought in because a lot of people were also complaining that even arbitration proceedings were getting lengthy. So with the new amendment, it's restricted to 18 months. So that's an advantage that parties have. Then there is also the amendment has added a fast track procedure. Under the fast track procedure, the parties can make a request. Unless the parties say that they want to have an oral hearing and they want both sides to be heard, the arbitral tribunal can decide a matter basis the written pleadings, documents, and submissions filed by the both parties. And here the award can be made within 6 months of instituting the arbitration. So there are ways of expediting arbitration. If both parties are clear that we will only submit evidence, we will just do written, we do not want oral hearings because we want it to go fast, they can go for that. Then something which Neelam had also touched upon is parties have the right to choose an expert. If it is a technical dispute, for example, if there's something very technical on the functioning of a product or the nature of a product that has been manufactured and there is a technical aspect in it or some technology is being transferred, both parties can say and can invite experts during the arbitration process. They can call them as witnesses during the arbitration proceedings. Also, they can also request if the arbitrator can have that expertise. They have the option to choose that, which you do not have in a litigation, because in litigation, it is basically the lawyers and the judges who are there. But in this case, arbitrators can be selected basis on their area of expertise. Then, finality and binding. The advantage is that here, if the parties say that the arbitral award will be final and binding, then they can file an appeal, they can challenge the award only if they feel that it has to be set aside because basic things of natural justice or there has been some grave issue in deciding the award. But in other cases, there is no appeal if they clearly say in the agreement that this is a final and binding agreement award. So that's one. Another very important aspect is confidentiality. Like, if MSMEs are, God forbid, suppose it's with a very big client, but you have no option but to go in for, in the contract it said arbitration. You go in for arbitration, there is confidentiality. Unlike litigation, arbitration is confidential. It happens in a location which the parties have agreed to. It's not open to public. And so the parties can keep it confidential. Nobody knows what's going on. Unlike a court proceeding where people know that, oh, this company has filed a case against XYZ. So there is confidentiality involved as well. Like I said, seat of arbitration, you can choose the seat or the place where you want the arbitration to happen. So both the parties are aware that, okay, the arbitration will happen in Delhi or the arbitration will happen in Bangalore. They're clear about it. There are no hidden surprises. Another thing is, just like any other court proceedings, even during arbitration, you can ask for interim relief. And now with the amendments in the Arbitration Act, the arbitrator can also grant interim relief and injunctions that can also be granted. In addition to that, even while there is an arbitration going on, the parties can go to the court and can also seek an injunction if it is involving an IPR matter, that they don't want another party to go ahead and use the trademark till the time the trademark, patent, copyright, or design dispute has been settled. So they put it on, they seek an injunction there. But while the injunction is going on, the arbitration carries on. So these are some of the aspects that make an arbitration more fruitful. Another very important thing which companies need to keep in mind is, couple of years back there was a case where one of the companies was doing very well, but then they came into troubled waters, and they didn't have a lot of money to pay their vendors, and their agreement with the vendor did not have an arbitration clause. So the vendor went and filed and lodged an FIR against that company owner, and the company owner was behind bars. And that is when, and he filed a case and he filed an FIR, and the owner was arrested on a Friday. So he was in jail on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday over the weekend. And that is when there was this whole discussion which came up that if they had an arbitration clause, then they had no option but to go in for arbitration, and he wouldn't have been behind bars. So these are certain aspects when you have to look at when you're going into arbitration, that, what if you owe money to someone? In that case, ensure there's an arbitration clause. If someone else owes money to you, then look at what is the amount of money that they owe you, or what is the nature of the contract or the financial terms which are involved there. And then make an informed decision with speaking to your lawyer that what is the best dispute resolution for you. In some cases, arbitration will not come into place. For example, matrimonial cases, matters relating to guardianship of a minor, testamentary matters, that is about validity of a will, insolvency matters, criminal proceedings, or dissolution or winding up of a company. These are some of the cases in which arbitration cannot be invoked. In all other cases, you need to look at what is the interest of the parties, what is the nature of the agreement, nature of the products or services that you're dealing, and the value of the products and services you're dealing before deciding which dispute resolution mechanism do you want to go for. So that is it from me, and over to you, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, very useful. Such a detailed, information about the arbitration proceedings. I have also heard it for the first time. In fact, we keep practicing arbitration, but then the nitty-gritties of arbitration, how do we go about, what are the implications, how do we select the arbitrator? There are very fine points which you have explained, and it is very interesting. We will come back to you with the questions. I have also noted down some questions about this. Let me go back to Neelam ji. In fact, we were talking about the communication and understanding of, the contract. And there is another point that you mentioned, that the courts have provisions to refer these disputes to the mediation. Whether I wanted to know whether all the courts have this provision, whether it is first choice of the courts, or it is only through the request being made by the litigants or the applicants that we are ready to go by the mediation. How does it start, I mean? And is it applicable for all sort of cases? Of course, leaving aside the criminal cases, I don't know whether the mediation is available for criminal cases. Criminal cases are done by the government itself. So can you explain a bit, how do people pursue this mediation?
Yeah, see, there are two ways to look at it. If the parties themselves are willing, then the first stage could be their respective lawyers. They can get in touch with each other, because mediation is anybody who brings both the parties on the table to discuss their issues. But when I refer to the court referring the matter to mediation, then most of these courts, especially I know of Delhi, they have a mediation center, and judges, they look at the matter, so they have a discretion. On their own discretion also, they can offer it to the parties. They can ask the parties and refer the matter to mediation. And till that time, they stays the proceedings. And if the parties reach to an agreement, they draw an agreement, they approach it back to the court, they file that agreement. And when the parties says, actually, what happens when the parties give their concurrence to go for mediation, when judges, they refer it, they offer it to the parties, then they actually sign an application form for their concurrence, where they agree to go for mediation. Now, but at the same time, if a court is not offering mediation, but the parties are willing, then they can also ask the court to refer the matter to the mediation. So at any stage, if parties feels that now they are exhausted of all these proceedings and they want to now reconcile, they can make an application to the court. Otherwise, court on its own also have a discretion to refer the matter to the mediation. And mediation, they can appoint. There's a committee, managing committee in every mediation center, and that committee allots a mediator to every case, because they have a panel of advocates, and there's no cost which parties have to pay for the mediator, and the process is kind of free of cost for them. I hope I'm able to answer your question, Mr. Kumar.
Sure, you have answered very well, I think.
Thank you.
Making it clear. And there was another question which I wanted to ask you. You said technical, legal, and commercial difference between the technical, commercial, and can you explain a bit more about these differentiation as to what is considered to be technical, commercial, and legal?
Yeah, I think I'll need to take an example for that. Like, I'll take Power to SMEs example, because we all know about Power to SMEs now and their business model. So Power to SME is like a digital trading company, gives a platform, and it does trading. So it has vendors and its suppliers as well. So let's assume that it has a supplier, and they are procuring certain chemicals from the supplier. So for these chemicals, they have certain standards set forth, and which are like legally also required. So if there is a dispute regarding the quality or the standard of those chemicals which have been supplied to Power to SME, so if they approach me as a lawyer, if they approach any judge or any arbitrator, would they be able to verify the standard or the quality of that supplies? Probably not, because they would need an expert. So in such scenarios, one way is they keep disputing it, they approach the court, start incurring the legal fees, and then the court orders for the certification from some experts in it and relies on it and gives its award. Now the second way is parties, they themselves choose it, that they would involve an expert, they will approach an expert and will take that expert's advice, and it could be somebody who is renowned from the industry. Because see, at the end of the day, we need to understand that mediation is an informal process and there is no hard and fast rules. At any point of time, two parties on their own also initiate a dialogue and resolve the matter. So if they feel that they can bring in an expert who is expert in this industry and can actually verify, or they approach a certification agency and they decide, they will appoint a certification agency which will do the quality audit of the supplies, and whatever they will confirm, the certificates they will give, they will resolve the issues accordingly. So that's one way to look at the problem. And the second, we are talking of commercial disputes, like some payments are based on usage. Let's take an example of a IT company where there are licenses which are being issued per user basis. So now there was an audit by the IT company and it finds out that the number of users are more than what they have actually allowed. And the service recipient company says, disputes that. Being an MSME, they say, no, these are the only, only 7 users are using it. So these are the commercial disputes. Now the company actually knows how many users are there. And, licensor company also knows how they have conducted the audit. So here, if they will both be adamant on their stand, then they definitely have to go for either arbitration or litigation. So in this kind of a position, it's like a commercial dispute. They can decide how much they are willing to compromise to save on a bigger cost on arbitration or a litigation or on lawyer's opinion and all that, and getting the lawyer's opinion on the terms of the contract and all those things. So these are kind of commercial, but in these cases, what happens in case of commercial, these MSMEs transactions, commercials, finding an expert would be very difficult. But most of the big companies, they can refer it to the big fours and they can get the accounts audit. And they can go to the, Deloitte and companies like this, they can ask to audit the usage of technology on their behalf. So that again, a huge cost, which makes more sense for the big companies. But for MSMEs, it may not be very viable option for them. So for them, it would be more important they decide how to resolve it, because most of the cases, they know the number, 50 people, 100 people in their organization, and whom they have given access. On the facts basis, they can resolve it. Now the third one is a legal one. So legal one, as Radhika also pointed out, that there could be an infringement. So if there is an IPR infringement, then you can go to an IPR lawyer like Radhika is there. So you can take expert's opinion. She can review their registered, IPRs and the usage by the other parties, whether it is well within the agreed terms or not. Whether, like sometimes, I will again take an example of an IT company. A product has been licensed to a company. Now that company engages its own software engineers and starts doing reverse engineering of the product. Because these days, techie guys are very smart, especially the young generation is very smart. Now they feel that the licensor would never get to know. So these kind of cases, you can decide if it happens, then you can go to a legal expert and these would fall in legal domain. Now the third kind of matters, like which can also fall in legal domain, is that legal issues is like, any indemnity issues. There's been agreement, but parties are not honoring. There was a proper way of terminating, wrongful termination of the agreement. All these issues would qualify as legal issues where you would need some legal expert to look at it.
Very well. I think it's very clear, the differentiation, because there are very fine differences between all three of them. So very well explained. Let me bring in Radhika again with two specific questions. One is, you said selection of arbitrators are done based on the odd number. It should be either 1, 3, 5, and then both the parties decide. My question is, most of the contracts have the provision built in the agreement itself that in case of arbitration, the arbitration will be carried out by the CEO or by somebody from such and such company. I mean, normally one of the parties refer their own company CEO or somebody, and then both parties agree and sign. So in that case, is it legally valid? Because both parties have agreed to one arbitrator which is already mentioned in the agreement itself, or it is considered to be biased in favor of the company which is writing, in their for their executives or chief executive or MD or somebody. And is it valid, or they have to go for an independent kind of a thing? And if it is only one and both parties do not agree, suppose somebody proposes and the second party doesn't agree, then what happens? How do they go about it?
That's a very, very valid question. And actually, what you asked is something which I have seen while reviewing some agreements, and I was shocked that how can one party name their own chairman or their own president? See, the whole thing of arbitration is it's an alternate to litigation, but the principles of natural justice remain the same. That is, it should be fair. Both parties should be given an opportunity of being heard, and the authority who's deciding should not be biased. Now, if the one of the parties has put it in the agreement that their own chairman or their own president or their own director or somebody is going to be an arbitrator, that's a complete no.
Normally they don't write that the president or the chairman will be the arbitrator, but they say that the person appointed by the chairman or the president or somebody nominated.
Actually, sir, you'll be surprised. There are some agreements in which they've actually mentioned their own that the chairman will be the arbitrator. I actually came across some and I was surprised that how did they sign it. But yes, some, like you rightly said, in some they also say that the chairman or the other parties will decide. It's very rare that in the arbitration agreement they actually specify the person who's going to be the arbitrator. They generally say a sole arbitrator mutually agreed to between the parties, because at that time, although it's a good practice if parties decide from before that who's going to be this neutral person who they're agreeing to, but it also depends that he could be influenced or she could be influenced. So it depends on both parties how their relation is. But mostly you'll see that in agreements they generally say that both parties will mutually agree to appoint a sole arbitrator. Now, if we come to your question of, so if they say that the president or the chairman is going to select, but it should be both parties. It cannot be that, if there are two parties, one party's chairman is going to decide arbitrator. Both parties have to mutually agree. That is the main purpose of arbitration. Both parties have to agree. And if you've signed a contract, then there is an issue because the court will say you agreed to it, or the arbitrator, the parties have agreed. So that's one important aspect that has to be kept in mind, that please do not agree to an arbitrator being appointed by one party. It should be both parties mutually agreeing to appoint one arbitrator. Or in case where parties are clear, they'll say party A will appoint one, party B will appoint one, and those two will appoint the three. But then that just leads to increasing the cost for arbitration. The second question which you said is, if both parties are unable to agree on a mutual arbitrator, then we generally write in the arbitration agreement that they will go for appointment of an arbitrator as per under the Act, which generally means that the court will appoint an appropriate arbitrator.
Right, yeah. Right. No, very interesting. And another, point I would like to ask about arbitration is, you mentioned in your earlier address that there are cases which cannot be covered and which are not covered under the arbitration. Can you specify again which are those kinds of cases or disputes that are not covered under the arbitration?
So some of them will be matrimonial cases, basically cases that are dealing with maybe life and anything which can be a criminal matter, or your matrimonial matters like divorce, or matters relating to guardianship of a minor, family law related matters, matters relating to the validity of a will, insolvency matters where you're adjudicating whether a person is insolvent, criminal proceedings, because criminal proceedings cannot be arbitrated between two parties. It has to go to court. Questions relating to winding up of a company or dissolution. These are some of the cases which will not come under arbitration or alternate dispute resolution. They have to be submitted to litigation.
Fair enough. I think it's clear. Anything which is related to lives of the people or lives of the companies.
Yeah,
Dissolution
exactly.
and insolvency is lives of the company. They are also,
Yes.
I think, artificial person, as you call them.
Exactly.
Illegal
Exactly.
terms.
That's a very good observation. Yes.
So anything related to lives of the persons, whether natural or artificial, probably they are not covered under the arbitration. It's very clear. So let me have one final question from Ms. Neelam. That is, how far these mediation settlements are legally tenable, and whether any of the parties who agree for mediation at one stage can back out later from the mediation. What is the possibility, and how far the mediation agreement can be, preserved to be or protected to be final without any change?
Yeah. See, how does it work when you are mediating through the reference of court? Basically, you have approached the court for your litigation, and their court has referred, or during the proceedings, parties have asked the court to refer it to mediation. So their parties actually sign a concurrence letter, an application form where they give their concurrence to this, that they are going for it and they are agreeing for it. In case of successful settlement, they would file that settlement agreement with the court, and then the court gives an award referring to that settlement agreement. That will have a validity like any court award or any arbitration award. So, but what happens, unfortunately, if you see the percentage of successful settlement in mediation proceedings, it's not very high somehow. And most of the times, parties do not reach to a settlement, or if they reach to a settlement, then I have seen even breaching the terms of the settlement agreement as well. Then that becomes another cause to take litigation, take a legal recourse or legal action against the parties. So law provides what best it can provide, but at the end of the day, human beings are involved who are always unpredictable, and other than the merits and demerits of the case, facts and circumstances, at times it's the ego issues as well. So parties agree for the settlement, they sign the settlement agreement, it's filed in the court, then they breach settlement agreement. So unless we will start honoring the contract with honesty and take every terms of the contract with sincerity, with an intention to honor that, to perform those terms, it will keep happening. So first is you're taking your contract seriously, reading it and accepting only those terms which you can comply with. And secondly, if you are going for a settlement or mediation, then again give respect to it and honor it. Otherwise, it will become another contract for you where you are breaching it, other party again approaching the court.
Yeah, I think it's quite understandable. Yes, very right. My final question to Radhika is, you see, arbitration is of course now one of the very, very prominent and very important way of settling the disputes. And we have all understood, I think the whole country understands the arbitration is a very important tool. So given that situation, why are we not as a country making it compulsory through law to set aside some kind of cases, maybe smaller? As you say, there are some cases excluded from arbitration. So some cases can be compulsorily included to be settled through arbitration. Is there any plan to do that? And if is it possible for our country, because crores and crores of cases are pending in courts, so which can easily be settled, like rent dispute cases. Now rent dispute cases, why should they go to the courts? It can be settled through arbitration, and there should be a list of approved arbitrators, maybe approved by the courts, so that they are considered to be like similar to the judicial pronouncements, and then these cases can be settled easily within some time. You see, can the courts or the judiciary or the government? I know it may be a bigger question, maybe a policy issue, but you can still throw some light whether anything of this sort is under consideration, and why it is not being done. Radhika.
So yes, it's a debatable question, but
am I clear in question, Radhika?
Yeah, I got your question. So the thing is that as per the law, every Indian has the right to approach the court. That's the fundamental right. And while what the courts have done and what the government is doing is, like, with the recent amendment in the 2019 Arbitration and Conciliation Act, they have brought in provisions to make arbitration more appealable to people because of the clauses that have happened. And they've seen that earlier people were saying arbitration is faster, but arbitration was also taking time, where people would go and stay an order and stay an award, and then the arbitration would be stuck. But now they've come up with provisions that now the arbitrator himself can grant interim relief, and the arbitration will not stay. They will give the relief, they can give an injunction, but the arbitration proceedings will carry on. They are also popularizing it. However, the government cannot make it mandatory, because this is a choice for the companies and the individuals to choose that what is the arbitration mechanism or what is the dispute resolution that they want to go for. However, in their own way, they are trying to, like, the court has come up in their own, they've come up with the, in Delhi, you have courts dealing with commercial courts, where they've brought in commercial courts, where they are also trying to educate people about, like, going for mediation, going for conciliation. They're also popularizing arbitration, but I don't see them making it mandatory. However, like in commercial courts, in Delhi High Court, you have a separate court for dealing with commercial courts, where it's supposed to be, commercial matters are supposed to be decided within a year. They are popularizing it, but I don't see them making it mandatory in certain cases. I really don't see that, but they may encourage it.
I can understand. Yes.
Yeah.
I can understand. No, I think it's a very fair answer that you have given. See, I was only wondering. I thought, let me provoke you. Maybe you have some more knowledge about this issue. But I understand, because this is a country which has millions of cases, and there is always a need of the hour and these are the best mechanism, mediation and arbitration both, and successfully working. You see, many of the people are getting benefited, and why not then this is made like for trivial cases, small cases, and up to a threshold limit, maybe up to 1 crore, 50 lakhs, or maybe 10 lakhs, small cases which need not go to courts and clog the courts system. And that is how I was thinking that government can come out. We will surely discuss with the government at some other end also, and see if these kinds of recommendations can be implemented.
Yes.
So I think we had a very useful discussions. I have exhausted my questions, and we have benefited a lot with the deliberations that we had today, with the expertise that both of you bring with you, with a good experience. I would request that both of you share your contact details also with Zubair, so that he can, or if you want to share it, you can share it now when you are speaking, so that our audience and our interested parties also, if they are interested in these kinds of issues, they can get in touch with you. And in any case, both of you are practicing lawyers and working for businesses and doing all these mediations and arbitration, so it will be very helpful to all of us. So we come to the close of this session. But we have question answer session left. So I'll ask Zumair and Sodamini. Are you there, Sodamini?
Yes, sir, I'm here, and we have lots of questions today. The
So we-
first one is from Mr. Gulati, whose query was kind of addressed by Ms. Radhika, but I was wondering if we could talk in more detail. He says we sent some small machines to a Kolkata customer. These were dispatched through a transport truck sent by him. There was some damage when these reached there. He made a complaint to us, and we agreed to repair these at site. But he filed a suit in consumer court citing the reason that we supplied old and used machines, which was not true. What is the remedy? Can he file the suit in a consumer court in Kolkata?
Radhika,
Yeah.
this question is addressed to Radhika. Radhika, I would suggest that these questions can be addressed in brief because we can take up more questions.
Yes. So what I would say is that the consumer can file the case in Calcutta because it will depend on the products. So it will be where the issue arose or where the cause of action arose. However, to avoid such an issue in future, what I would say is I think even Neelam had addressed that when in your contract ensure that the moment when you're handing over the product to a client, actually then the product goes over to him and he's liable for it. So ensure that when you're handing over, even when the client is sending the transport and they are picking it up, they do an inspection there. You get it signed off that they've inspected the products and they're fine. And then if any damage happens to them during transportation, it is their liability, not yours.
Yeah.
So, this would be one aspect which I would say in future to keep in mind while negotiating the contract, to look at
Yeah.
that till where is your liability. Sorry,
Just
I think
yeah.
Neelam, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, there has to be a clause on risk of loss and damage. So that has to be very clearly, categorically stated in the document till what point you are responsible, and when you hand over, then what exactly are you transferring, whether the title as well or only the risk or damages, or you retain the title till you receive the entire payment. So this should have been covered in the contract, but your question was very specific to the jurisdiction, so of the filing of the consumer complaint. So Radhika has already answered, sir.
So Sodamini, next.
Sir, the next one is from a very regular attendee of ours, Mr. Surinder Singhal. He's asked a question in two parts. And उनके question का पहला part, sir, I think बहुत जायज़, and I think everybody will agree. He is asking, can lawyers have a reasonable standardized schedule of their charges for assisting MSCs in legal proceedings?
Good one. I think any of you can answer. Any of you can answer.
See, usually we lawyers have been very reasonable, see what happens, the approach of the customer, I would say that approach of MSME client should also be slightly different, because the value which we are adding and what we are bringing on the table, that should be appreciated. I'm not saying that we charge way too high and we are not willing to justify our cost, or we are not willing to bring down our cost on a case-to-case basis. But what happens, lawyers are your partner, your extended arm, so they should also grow with you, right? If you are growing, let them also grow. But on a case-to-case basis, we are willing to look at it. But at the same time, our work should be appreciated, the time which we invest in. Radhika, you can add to it.
Yeah. So actually there is like what Neelam also said. See, there is, all lawyers will have a separate charges. They're not same. And there are no guidelines as such which kind of say that the charges have to be a certain way. So it will depend on where you're going and who are you approaching. But at the same time, like what Neelam said, is it is basis, the charges will most probably will be based on the expertise of the person, the number of years that they have been in the profession, and the time they spend and the expertise that they bring on when they're taking up the matters. So there are no fixed actually guidelines or any charges as such which lawyers will have,
Yeah.
or
So
any guidelines. Yeah, like chartered
So the-
accountants have, but yeah.
So the second part of his question is, in a buyer drafted purchase order, jurisdiction reserved to his place, whereas seller supply invoice being subject to his place of business. Which court would dispose of petition under section 34 after arbitral award is issued from a different venue of seat?
Okay, so in this actually there are too many things involved.
Dinesh here.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so there'll be too many things involved, which I think I may not be able to answer here. But in the purchase order, if there is an arbitration clause and there has been an arbitration and the jurisdiction that they've mentioned, it'll be enforced there itself, where the arbitration award has been, granted. So it'll be there. If I've understood the question, because I think there were too many elements in it.
No, the question is not that. Question is that the purchase order says Ranchi and supplier says Haryana. So both the jurisdiction will be there. Section 2(1)(e) of the Arbitration Act says the court, any of the two places, it has jurisdiction. Section 10 CPC will come into play, that whosoever files prior.
Hmm.
In that case, the seat of arbitration would have no meaning, if I'm correct.
Seat of arbitration will come into play if in the purchase order both the parties have decided one seat of arbitration. Now
There is no
that is the
decision.
advantage.
There is no decision. There is no decision. It is the one-sided contract. The purchaser issues a purchase order without my signature, the buyer signature, the seller signature. And the seller says, I want to sell you goods. Invoice says, my jurisdiction. So both have fixed their own jurisdiction. One in the purchase order, the other in the supply bill.
Yes, this is an issue which does come up, and I know as a seller it becomes difficult, but it's generally advisable to have it if the parties can decide to have one jurisdiction. If not, then it'll be where the suit was filed or where the arbitration happened, or where the court enforced the particular award. So it'll be in that court itself. But that's where the issue arises, when the PO and the invoice have different jurisdictions. So it's always better, we advise our clients that before you enter into an agreement with either a vendor or even a client, have a proper agreement to which the PO and all will be subject to, and in that clearly mention who will be what will be the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And subsequent to that, have your PO. Yeah.
You want to add, Neelam, something?
Yeah, I just want to add one point. I mean, the best way is what Radhika has suggested. But what happens, like, suppose invoice would be a later document because PO is placed first, then invoice would be a later document. And if the invoice has been accepted in writing by the other party, then that would constitute the understanding of the parties, superseding the previous document's understanding. But again, there could be a challenge by the other party on certain grounds. So the best way is either to have a similar clause, discuss about the jurisdiction clause prior to sending these documents to each other, and then have a similar clause, or maybe on email agree on something while accepting the invoice, or otherwise the best option is to have an agreement.
Okay. So Damini?
Mr. Hitesh Gupta is asking, he says, we have won the case in MSME Act 2006, where our case we received the degree. Further to this, we have filed case in Bombay High Court. The present address, which we know is belonging to some other. We are not aware of his property, and even the shareholder are getting changed from original to dummy person. How can we get help for this?
So he has obtained the decree.
Yes.
So I think it has crossed the arbitration stage and the mediation stage.
Yeah.
So it has gone basically to the
Enforced.
legal, machinery, and he has obtained the decree. Probably he has gone for execution of the decree, isn't it? So Radhika, can you throw some light on this?
Yes, he's gone for execution of the decree. Now, what I understand is that the shareholders are changing, right? The shareholders have changed, or they're going. So
Hello.
See, it could be that it's
Hello.
Yes.
Can I speak?
Who's there?
Nitesh
come on.
Gupta. Yeah, Hitesh
Yeah,
Gupta
please.
here. Sir,
Yeah.
actually the thing is, I have won the case in MSMED Act 2006,
From the
whereby,
Facilitation Council?
yeah, from the Facilitation Council.
Okay.
So the thing is, this case has been won in the year of 2010,
Okay.
and after that, I've got an award also.
You're in your favor.
Yeah, in my favor.
Okay.
The amount is going beyond 5 crore. So this case was like, I have submitted this award in the Thana High Court, the Thana Court. Then they have said that this won't be coming over to us. Then they have passed out to the Bombay High Court,
Okay.
wherein we were having the address of the Ispat Industries Mittal Group. This company belongs to.
Okay.
So the thing is, they have given us that this location, we have got a location where they are having their this offices. At that particular moment, we have done a this sale warrant also. We have proceeded with the sale warrant. Then after that, we got to know that this property belongs to the JSW Steel Limited.
So I understand the issue. You need not tell me.
And one more thing, the original directors were the shareholder for the same company. Then after proceeding with many of the things, because this is a Mittal Group company, so he introduced some dummy directors.
Can I intervene here?
Yeah.
Mr. Gupta, I have understood the case. You need not inform me the details of the case. Let me give you the answer.
Okay.
Your concern is that you have got the award from the MSME Facilitation Council in your favor for recovery of more than 5 crores from whatever group you are naming, and then you have gone for execution of that award to the Bombay High Court. Is that the question, isn't it? Now the point is, when you had contracted this agreement or this deal with whatever company you are naming that their directors are not there, or their directors are fake, or their shareholders, or the address is fake, I think that was the time when you should have gone into depth and details and understood whether you are entering the contract with a genuine party or a party which has fake addresses, fake directors, or maybe different things. So having already crossed that stage, now since you have got the decree in your favor, I mean the decision in your favor, the best thing is that you have already done approaching the court for execution of that award. I think that award can be executed with the help of the court, and whatever personal assets, whatever company's assets which are responsible for paying your dues will be attached, and the action will be taken by the directions of the High Court. I think that is what I think we can say as of now, if I am right.
Yes, and just to add to one thing here, change of shareholders do not change the entity. So you can still proceed against the same entity, irrespective of fact whether the entire shareholding has now been changed.
That's right. That is, so company is responsible because you have contracted the whole thing with the company.
And so here also I would like to add, if the people who had committed the fraud or the act, if they were directors, they will still be liable. If they were, because if you're a director of a company, even if you no longer continue to be a director, there is a certain time period within which, if there were some acts which were committed which resulted in some some fraud or some issues that arose, the directors will continue to be liable, and the company, like what Neelam said, will be liable, because provided that the person who signed the agreement on behalf of the company was authorized.
Yeah,
that is very important. Yeah.
So we can go ahead, I think, Sadamini.
So Mr. Aryan Pandey is asking, during COVID-19, our business has collapsed, and now our bankers have declared our account NPA and has served us notice of recovery. Can you guide what action can we take on the bank, as all talks with the banks have had no positive feedback from their end?
So I think the Reserve Bank of India had given directions to all the banks that they should postpone declaration of NPAs for some time. I think for 6 months or so, they have given some window that for the period from 1st February to first they gave 3 months and then they extended it by 3 months. The banks have to give moratorium in the principal as well as interest, and then for this period they should not declare NPAs. So
Yeah, but sir, just to add to one thing, sorry, I'm intervening here. So, you know, actually moratorium has been increased till December now, recently, day before yesterday. But the point is, they are considering only those companies, not to declare those companies as NPAs who have not been paying during this period. But what if they, you know, already outstanding dues?
yes,
You know, made them qualified in the category of NPA.
absolutely.
Then they are not giving any relaxation to those companies.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it has started from 1st February. Anything due from 1st February onwards, principal and interest, that covers under the moratorium. But if your account became irregular before 1st February, as Neelam has rightly mentioned, naturally they would go for it. But if you have a genuine concern, you can write to the bank, and whatever is the reasonable, legally valid things, they will do it. Yes, Sadam.
Mr. Dhananjay is saying we filed petition with the MSME Facilitation Council in the year 2013. This was decided in year May 2018 and award was passed in our favor. But the customer has not honored the award, nor have they gone in appeal.
Yeah, I think that problem continues, in fact, with the MSME Facilitation Council. As per my knowledge, I think Ms. Neelam and Radhika can add to what I am saying, being legal persons. As far as my knowledge is that MSME Facilitation Councils do not have legal teeth. They are not judicial bodies. So ultimately,
So what can he do in this case?
he can go to the courts.
Yeah.
That is the only thing he can do. Neelam?
Yeah, he can go to the court because, you know, whatever the settlement agreed upon or whatever the award was, that is not being, you know, honored. So that's again a breach. What
Yes.
if there is a court award and that is other parties not honoring that? Then also you are left with this remedy only, again approaching the court.
Right. Next.
So the next question from Mr. Sanjeev Sharma is, aren't arbitrations more expensive? Also, what kind of people should be appointed as arbitrators apart from retired judges? Problem is, retired judges run matters exactly like courts, thereby wasting lots of time.
Radhika?
So, like I'd explained in the presentation, that arbitration is, see, when you're looking at appointing an arbitrator, when both parties are agreeing to an arbitrator, they need to keep in mind that always look at the cost, always look at who are you appointing. Yes, a lot of parties go for retired judges, but like we said earlier, you can also look at the experts in that area. You don't have to always go to a retired judge. Look at an expert, and then take into account the costs. Where is the venue? So that's how the parties have to look at who are they appointing an arbitrator, where is the venue that they're looking at, and also what will be the costs of having it at that venue. So if you look at all those aspects, the cost can be reduced. And yeah, but other than a retired judge, I would say they can go to an industry expert, which both the parties are agreeable to, and they think that the person will not be biased towards one party. So they always have that option available. That's the advantage of arbitration. You can choose who you would want to be the arbitrator. It's not fixed.
Right.
Yes.
Mr. T. A. Hari Krishnan is asking, contract may have an arbitration clause, but there is a mediation and arbitration process applicable to MSMEs under the MSME Act. In case of any disputes, which would be better option for MSME to invoke a non-MSME buyer? Could you explain the pros and cons in both?
See, and under arbitration, you have an option to choose whether you want to go for an institutional arbitration, whether you want to refer to an institutional or to an organization whose rules you will be subject to. And at that time, it's very important to understand that what are the, what is the procedure under the MSME, under that act, and what, or they go in under, if it's in India, it will be the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. If go for the other one, only if the procedure for MSME, only if the procedure is very clearly outlined, and what are the timelines that are given there, what are the authorities, who are the people who will be doing the arbitration. You will need to weigh the pros and cons of both options that are available, depending on, again, the same thing, nature of parties, nature of business, nature of services that are being offered. All of that has to be looked inside. Only then can you weigh. So this is another important consideration for parties when they're deciding that who will be, how will they be, what will be the binding authority. Do they want to go under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, or do they want to go under some arbitration institutional authority? Like right now in Bombay, we have an arbitration center, which the parties can be subject to, but always read the rules of arbitration, what will be the procedure, and then take a call. So that's where it's
Yes.
important to understand.
Yes. So Damini, next.
The last question. WinPlus Sales says most cases by MSMEs is about getting payment from the parties after goods are supplied. What is the ballpark minimum cost if any of the legal options are availed?
It's very difficult to, quantify at this stage, because there are various factors that need to be looked into it. Actually the complexity in the matter, documentation involved, and merits and demerits, and so it's very difficult, to quantify any cost, whether related to conciliation or arbitration or litigation at this stage.
Yeah. So Damini.
So that's all for today. I would like to thank both the audience and the panelists for extraordinary patience through this Q&A session. It was very intensive and very informative for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sudhamini. I think very interesting questions, and a lot of knowledge has flown today, in fact, from both these experts to our audience with regard to arbitration and mediation. Both are very important tools. In fact, if as a country we have to really do, ease of doing business, actual ease of doing business, making the contract enforcement easier, the processes easier, and resolution of the disputes easier for the businesses is very key to the development of whatever GDP and economic growth we are talking about. Further, it also has to ease the lives of the people, because how much time does it take, and energy and efficiency and diversion of resources, because people are busy in managing their affairs. They don't have time. In fact, it bothers a lot to go and pursue the cases time and again, go and waste the time. I mean, I'm not discrediting the court processes or the roles of the advocates, because in any case, once you have filed the case, you have to talk to the advocates and talk to them. It is the legal practitioners and more and more people like like Neelam and Radhika, who are intelligent and who are modern day practitioners who are doing all their work very intelligently and helping the MSME sector. But a lot of them, are with credentials which are suspected. So it is very difficult for the business community, in fact, to deal with legal cases repeatedly. So it's all the more necessary that mediation and arbitration are practiced and implemented on a vast scale all over the country. And that is how the burden of so many cases can come down on the courts as we see. I don't know how it is going to be resolved in future. We are all struggling, in fact, with the mounting number of cases. Day by day, more and more acts and provisions are coming, and more cases are mounting. Small disputes also coming to the courts. So I thank all the panelists, our experts. Neelam and Radhika both are very experts in their fields. They can share their contact details with Zubair or Sudhamini. If you want, you can share your details on the screen also if you like. Otherwise, I thank you, both of you, and hope that you will continue to assist, and we'll continue to have this interaction in fact in future also for the benefit of the audience. And thank you, the organizers, the Wadhwani Foundation, and also Power to SME. I'm also part of Power to SME, and it's a very unique organization helping the MSMEs all over the country. Zumair has already explained, in fact, the main verticals of Power to SME and how Power to SME is helping to reduce the problems and cost of MSMEs in procurement of raw material as well as credit. So thanks Ms. Sudha Sareen, who is Senior Vice President of Power to SME, who is the brain behind organizing these events. Zubair and Sodamini, both are my colleagues, in fact, helping and working backroom, in fact, to put these programs together and put all these logistics together so that the whole program becomes a successful. So thanks to you all, and thank you very much, audience, in fact, the participants who are making these events successful. Thank you very much. Thank you all, and we close this program. Over to you, Zubair.
Thank you for conducting such a insightful discussion. And I request all the participants to kindly submit their feedback on the link shared on the chat box. And till we meet again, have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.